Hi, and welcome back to the Live, Learn, and Play podcast, a podcast about the people, places, and programs at Arkansas Children's. I'm your host, Rebecca Brockman. Happy Halloween to all of our listeners. We hope you and your kids are staying safe during the fun festivities. On today's episode, we will be discussing an important function here at Arkansas Children's, the Family Advisory Board, with our parent on staff, Jodie McGinley. Jodie is a wonderful asset to our patients and families here, and she also shares her deeply emotional story about her and her family's journey from heartbreak to giving back. As always, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe to the Live, Learn, and Play podcast. Now, here's Jodie. We are joined by Jodie McGinley. She is a parent partner here at Arkansas Children's. Jodie, welcome to the Live, Learn, and Play podcast. We like to talk about the people, places, and programs here at Arkansas Children's. And Jodie is part of a unique program here at Arkansas Children's. She is our parent partner. So for our listeners, first, just tell us exactly what that means, what you do here at Arkansas Children's, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. So I am honored to be able to serve in the capacity of parent partner, and essentially what that means is I'm a parent, and I'm a parent that is on staff Arkansas Children's, to be able to give parent feedback on decision making and across the board, any kind of opinions that they may need from a particular parent. I'm able to provide that, and I work directly with our parent and family advisors who serve Arkansas Children's Hospital as well. They all have stories and experiences that they bring to the table as well. But first and foremost, I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of all of my children receive services here, and then we also have our story that actually began here at Arkansas Children's Hospital. So I'm able to advise to the hospital in that manner.
Now, is the parent partner position, is that exclusive to children's hospitals, or would you see that in an adult facility?
So it is very common now across the country for pediatric hospitals to bring parent partners on staff. It's actually a growing trend across the nation now that they are trying, many hospitals across the country, especially pediatric hospitals, are trying to plug into how they can better the patient experience. And Arkansas Children's several years ago said, you know what, we believe in this as well, and we want to try this program to be able to look into this and better our patient experience.
Because the patient experience is different at a children's hospital, we always say here, and when you're talking to team members, we are not just taking care of the patient, we're taking care of the whole family. So your perspective is really unique then to the patient experience.
So I know from personal experience with our own family story that some of the decisions that are made for in pediatrics, and of course for the patients and families, can impact these patients and families for the rest of their lives. And it wasn't until several years past the point of our own story here at Arkansas Children's that I realized the importance of what was going on. And we later found out that this actually had a name, and it's called patient and family-centered care. When I figured out that this was actually a thing, and working with patients and families and not just doing to and for them, and knowing that the rest of my life was impacted because of the great work that was done here at Arkansas Children's Hospital and within the UAMS system as well, because our story kind of interlocks between the two facilities. I know that I am a better person and a better mother, and our family is a better family because of what actually happened. And I'm not the only family in the state of Arkansas that this has happened to, so I know just how important it is. Patient family-centered care really guided the rest of our lives. So I'm a believer in this program and across the country. All things patient family-centered care I'm extremely passionate about.
So along those lines with the patient family-centered care, you are part of our family advisory boards. Do you oversee them? Tell us about your relationship with the family advisory board.
A part of my umbrella here at Arkansas Children's is I am able to onboard family advisors, and these are volunteers, but these are parents or guardians or family members who have also had experiences here with their children at Arkansas Children's. So they want to give back in a manner that they want to make things better for forthcoming families that are going to experience care here within the next year, or maybe next 5 years or 10 years, whatever that looks like for them. And so I onboard these advisors to our system, and I'm able to plug them into the appropriate family advisory board. So, for instance, we have a family who wants to advise for the hospital, and they are a CVICU family. Their experience is involved in a heart mission, and they want to be able to give back in that way. And so we bring them on as an advisor for the hospital, and I plug them right into the CVICU Family Advisory Board. The same thing for HEMOC, where we have 10 different family advisory boards across our Arkansas Children's system. And even for our families that live across the state that may not be able to drive into Little Rock once a month for these meetings, we have a Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group we call the ACH E-Council, or the Arkansas Children's E-Council, that they can actually serve as an advisor, but kind of in a different capacity. They're able to advise for the hospital in this private group. So we bring questions to them on the E-Council on Facebook, and they're able to give us their feedback right from the couch in their home. And so, being an advisor isn't just limited to families here in Central Arkansas. Being an advisor is statewide, or for some families even nationwide, because we do have families that do travel to Arkansas to receive services here at Arkansas Children's as well. So that gives us the option to be able to bring in those patient and family stories and their experiences and their feedback.
And I think that that's awesome that the hospital realizes the importance of involving families, and especially if the families have gone through something similar, working with families who are currently in the hospital. I think that's a neat program here. You talk about your story, so just share a little bit about your story and your personal connection to Arkansas Children's.
So my husband Jesse and I we experienced miscarriages and a lot of infertility issues for many years, and we really questioned whether or not we were actually going to be able to become parents. And after a lot of decision making and fertility treatments, we did become pregnant with twins. And early on in that pregnancy, about 19 weeks along, we were told that one of the twins would have a birth defect called spina bifida. So we knew that we were expecting to deliver twin boys, one with a birth anomaly, and the other one that was going to come into this world completely healthy. So we prepared for that journey the best that we could. And the really neat thing about our experience is that our high-risk specialist at the time sent us to Arkansas Children's Hospital after he delivered that news to meet with the spina bifida team.
Okay, first, just tell us about when you first heard the news that one of the twins would have a birth anomaly, the spina bifida. What were your thoughts as a pregnant mom? What was going through your mind?
Of course, we were really, really surprised at that news, because we'd had so many complications up to that point that we were hoping for the best. But I will tell you that, I'm a teacher by degree, and my husband is an engineer. And at the time of that diagnosis, I was working with special needs children, and every teacher has a teacher's pet, and my teacher's pet was a little boy by the name of Owen, and he had spina bifida. And when we received that news that day from the doctor, I actually wasn't let down by any means. The surprise was definitely there, but I knew how much I loved Owen, and I knew that welcoming a little boy with the same condition as Owen into this world, I was very much at peace with that. My husband, on the other hand, and he's electrical engineer, so his mind works in processes and numbers, and if things line up, it'll all work out. And he was very much stunned. And for someone that has never been thrown into the special needs world, my husband really didn't know what to expect. So when we received that news that day together, I think he and I were on two completely different paths of what was going to happen. So there was a lot of joy, and then there was a lot of shock. And then how do you how do you combine the two, as a family unit? It's something that we had to really work through together.
And then what were the next steps after that diagnosis?
So we were referred to Arkansas Children's Spina Bifida team. I loved this process looking back because it gave us the opportunity to meet with the very team that we were expected to work with for the next 18 years of our child's life. So within 2 weeks of that diagnosis, we were walking here on this campus and we met with that team. And the very first thing that they told us at that table was congratulations, and we cannot wait to meet your son. And I will tell you, as a mother of a special needs child, someone that is feeling a lot of anxiety and trying to take it all in. Even though I was excited to become a mother, there were questions. And the moment that team told my husband and I that, and they were excited for us, it made us excited. So it was very much, it created a family atmosphere for us. And all of a sudden, I feel like our world kind of shifted at that point because that team was excited. They wanted to work with our family, and they could not wait for our son. And it made us excited, too, because these were the relationships that were going to build our family for the next few years. And that meeting was important for us because they gave us kind of a guideline as to what to expect upon delivery and what to expect those months after our son Eli was going to be born, what his life was going to potentially look like at that point. How often would we be on the Arkansas Children's campus to be able to meet with this team, and what would life look like for us? And that was a great meeting. And so I'm very much in awe of this system, the statewide system, to be able to refer these families to Arkansas Children's to meet with these different units, the heart team and the HEMOC team, and of course the spina bifida team and the kidney team, and all the birth defects out there that Arkansas Children's teams are able to, the families that they're able to work with. I'm really overjoyed that they're being proactive in creating these relationships with these families prenatally.
So you left, it sounds like that first meeting went really well. You left feeling positive. Hopefully it helped your husband a little bit more with his understanding. And then how did the rest of your pregnancy go?
We were immediately told that we needed to go on bed rest. So I was on bed rest for approximately 14 weeks, and we needed to make it to 36 weeks. As close to that as possible. And we did. We made it to 35 weeks, 6 days, very close, hours away from that 36-week mark, and we delivered Walker and Eli. We delivered Walker and Eli at UAMS, and the next week really changed the path of our lives, and this is where we became involved in the patient and family-centered care aspect of our journey. Eli was immediately taken to Arkansas Children's Hospital, and he was under the care of the spina bifida team. Of course, we were separated just within the hour after he was born, and so thankful that we met with that team beforehand, because as a new mom, it's good to know beforehand that you're going to be separated from your newborn.
So you knew that was going to happen, like you were going to deliver, and he was going to be taken away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm really grateful to know that, because as a new mother, it's good to know that you're not going to be able to hold your child for the first time. You will not give him a bath, and you will not have the opportunity to breastfeed, and all the new mom things that we take for granted. It was so good to know that beforehand, so that way the emotions and the feelings aren't so disturbed, I guess, at the time. And it
how do you prepare for that? Because that's a big part of the delivery process, is holding the baby immediately.
It is.
How did you mentally, or how did you prepare for that?
For me, it was a lot of prayer and a lot of focus on knowing that he was going to be receiving the best care possible. I knew where he was. I knew what team he was, and it helped greatly having been able to meet that team beforehand. They were able to keep us informed along the way through teleconference meetings from UAMS to Arkansas Children's. And so we were able to talk with the teams, meet with the teams, and my husband, of course, was back and forth from both facilities. And it was it was a great experience, communication-wise, for sure.
Okay, and then what? So he was, Eli was taken away, and then was Walker stayed with you, or?
So Walker was admitted to the UAMS NICU just for observation purposes at the time. He was doing great up until that very next day, and as a slightly premature male, they have a tendency to blow a lung is what they call it, but it's a condition called pneumothorax. They tend to have weaker lungs for premature babies, and he actually that very next day ended up having a pneumothorax in the NICU. So for his observation that they were watching him for, he actually did it in the NICU, and so he became critical very, very quickly, very unexpectedly, and they inserted a chest tube in him. He was a touch me not baby in the NICU all of a sudden, and that was a difficult thing to hear as a parent, knowing that now both of your boys, were critical.
I'm sure when you picture delivering your babies, this was completely different. So what were some of your conversations like with you and your husband during this time?
I don't know that we had a whole lot, because we didn't have a lot of time to be able to do all of that discussion, because when we received the call that Walker had a pneumothorax was about the time that we were signing paperwork to send Eli into surgery to close up his myelomeningocele, his spina bifida condition on his back. And so it was such a whirlwind of several days going on. And, from that moment on, it really didn't slow down, because that very next day, we received the news that Eli, his condition was worse off than what they had initially thought after all of his MRIs. And, that really caught us off guard. We were not expecting that. We had 2 car seats in our vehicle. We had, 2 swings set up in our living room. We had 2 of everything. And we knew we were bringing home 2 little boys.
Okay, so Jodie, you said that the day of surgery, you learned that the condition was worse than you thought.
Yes.
Take us through that day preparing for surgery and then hearing different news.
So I think Jesse and I's expectations for what was going to happen was just not realistic for what was going to happen. And there was a nurse practitioner who she works in the NICU. She's still employed here. Wonderful woman and lifelong friend of ours. She picked up on the lack of questions that my husband and I had, and she picked up on our body language, and she knew from just from the observation, that my husband and I didn't fully understand the depth of what was going on with our son Eli. And she made a very, very brave and courageous decision to sit us down and plug into us and ask us questions to make sure that we did fully understand. And this process is called informed consent or informed decision making. And it's so important that our medical staff plug into these families to make sure that they fully understand. Because my husband and I, we are not medically trained. Like as I shared, you have a teacher and an engineer. And that process for us, it was very evident looking back on it. We didn't understand. And she pulled us in. She explained to us really what long-term what Eli's life was going to look like. She made the brave decision to just sit us down and make sure that we understood what was actually transpiring that day. What did we understand what Eli's life was going to look like long term? And she went in to share with us, some of the most difficult things that Jesse and I will ever hear in our lives. But she shared with us that, Eli would likely never feed himself, and he would never walk, and he would be dependent on a tracheotomy, breathing machine for the rest of his life. And we'd have 24-hour home nursing health care at our home. And she said that, he'll never know his twin brother. And she said he will never call you mommy or daddy. And that was definitely the hardest thing that we had ever heard. And it changed everything for my husband and I. And although we had never had a conversation about our child never making it, we knew at that time that we wanted to speak with Aurora, which is Arkansas Regional Organ Recovery Agency, to find out if he would be a candidate for organ or tissue donation. And when we received that news back that afternoon that he would be a candidate, we knew as a family what we needed to do. And, looking at that and knowing our advisors and their stories and knowing their hearts, I can tell you that what that decision for our family was right for our family, but might not necessarily be the right decision for another family. And, and I fully understand that.
You expected a successful surgery and to go home with 2 babies. And then talking with that nurse practitioner basically changed, like you said, the course of your entire life. I guess just answering those questions that you were not prepared for, like what was going through your mind, and what would you say to other parents who are having these difficult conversations?
There were a lot of things going through my mind that day. One of the biggest was, how is this going to impact Walker? I'm not a twin, so I don't know, and I'll never fully understand, how that's going to impact a twin. But I knew that day that it was going to look much differently for him that even it would for Jesse and I as the parents. So we definitely had that to consider upon making that decision. And what I would share for other families is to plug into your family system, plug into your network of church family or your community, or whatever that looks like for your family, because I can look back on our experience that day and all the unknowns and all the unexpected news and the things that we received. And I know what actually kept us afloat was the fact that we had our friends and family there with us as we were making those decisions. And I can't imagine that not being the case if we had to do it all over again. So definitely to plug into that, but also to, if they have a doctor that they, have partnered with on their child's care, or a particular nurse, or, it could be a respiratory therapist. It could look like many hats around this hospital, but every family has one as they're receiving care here. And if you don't have that availability to bring in your community or your family or your friend network, is to be able to plug into that healthcare provider that you trust. Because that's going to be really powerful and essential as you're making those decisions, is to have someone there outside of your spouse or yourself, or whatever that looks like for that particular family, to be able to have a healthcare person that you trust to be able to help you through those difficult conversations and decisions.
And the story doesn't end just with the organ donation as well. You have a unique story behind that as well. You share a little bit about that. Like it didn't end with the organ donation. Elis Story continues after that.
It does, and this is where I have become very passionate about patient family-centered care, is that we removed him off support that very next day, surrounded with our family and friends and our pastor, and we did our baby dedication. All the things that we would have done at home, we did here on the Arkansas Children's Campus up in the NICU. And it was a very sad night, but it also turned into a very beautiful situation, because our neonatologist had told us that once we removed support, to only expect just a few minutes with Eli. And actually what happened was, once removed from support, he actually survived and breathed on his own for 31 more hours. So what ends up happening there is you have a team at UAMS, and you have a team at Arkansas Children's, and you have twin boys that are still split up between I-630, and you have a situation there that's unexpected. And this is where patient family-centered care comes in. And we had 2 very, very knowledgeable, very compassionate teams working together to get the boys reunited, since we had all of this extra time and he was still breathing on his own. And you had, families that our family system, he was very broken. As patients' families, we don't know what we can ask for. I would have never known that we could have had the boys reunited, but we're very fortunate in that the teams were thinking for us whenever we couldn't think for ourselves, all of that unexpectedness. And that very next morning, it was approaching about the 24-hour mark off of support as he kept breathing. That very next morning, they made that decision to have the boys reunited. And I remember the point where the Angel One transport team, and I refer to them as the guys in the black jumpsuits, they look like superheroes if you've never seen them before, but they're amazing. And I remember them coming into Walker's NICU room at UAMS, wheeling in the travel isolette with our son. It was Eli that was being wheeled into Walker's NICU room, and the point where they put the boys back together in Walker's isolette. And this was the first time that I had actually visually seen my twin boys together. And there was a nurse who saw my new mommy camera sitting in the corner of the room that hadn't been touched all week because of all the unexpectedness. She grabbed the camera and she began taking pictures of Walker and Eli together. And there was one photo in particular where Eli's arm, one of the nurses had laid his arm over onto Walker's shoulder, and there was a little smirk that came across his face. And we also have the only family photo we will ever have. It's my husband and I and Walker and Eli. And those moments and those photos are so precious to us, and we're also so thankful that a nurse thought to grab the camera because, as a mother in the midst of the deepest, darkest hours of her life, I was not thinking about grabbing my camera, and I'm so, so grateful to have those photos. They are the only photos we'll ever have, and it's probably one of the biggest gifts that could have ever been handed to Jesse and I. Eli passed away in our arms at about 1:30 a.m. that next morning. So we were able to spend the entire afternoon as a family of 4, as it should have been. And something I love to share is patient family-centered care. It's powerful and it's wonderful, and it can impact a lot of these families for the rest of their lives, but it also is sometimes very hard, and it's very inconvenient, and it's very unexpected. And for healthcare workers, you've got to be able to maneuver between these situations. There's not a textbook that's going to be able to teach you patient family-centered care. You've just got to be able to grasp it and embrace it as these opportunities happen for these patients and families.
Well, like you said, the nurse practitioner who saw your body language, meeting the team from the very beginning, to the nurse who took pictures, you're not just a patient here. It's
exactly
we are dealing with the whole family, and making sure that we're capturing those moments that you will hold on to forever. So before we let you go, we do want to hear more about the organ donation and how you were able to form a relationship with the organ donor family.
Oh, I would love to. So this is definitely our silver lining for Walker and Eli's story, for my husband and I. We received the news that Eli's aortic valve had gone to a 2-day-old little girl in the state of Maine, which for an Arkansan, that seems like a world apart because we never run into anybody that's from Maine. But this little girl was born with 2 heart defects. She had a hole in her heart, and she also had an aortic valve that was too small. And so this was a life-changing donation for her, that she received Eli's aortic valve at 2 days old, but she is now a very healthy first grader. She's doing extremely well. Her name is Cambry, and we have a relationship with this family. We speak to them, several times a week through texting and through FaceTime, and so she and her family are very much a part of our family on a day-to-day basis, and we're very blessed to have that experience. Definitely a lot of healing in that process, but we traveled to Maine, and they traveled to Arkansas, so it's a wonderful and beautiful ending to that part of Eli's story for sure. And then his pulmonary valve went on a Doctors Without Borders mission trip. I know that this is a nationwide nonprofit, so it's a common nonprofit. I'm sure many people have probably heard of that, but we have physicians and nurses here on the Arkansas Children's Campus that actually serve on these mission trips as well. And they will travel to third world countries and do life-saving transplants or procedures on these individuals in the villages and just in very impoverished areas where they don't have access to health care. And there was a little boy in the village somewhere in the Dominican Republic, and his name is Luis. And Luis was 9 years old, and he received Eli's pulmonary valve, which is really interesting because what we're able to do with medicine now is they took Eli's pulmonary valve and they cut it as a bicuspid onlay patch for a little boy that had a hole in his heart. So somewhere in the Dominican Republic, there is a part of my little boy that's running around. And, as a donor mom, there's not much more joy and gladness that you could ask, than to know that these precious, precious children are going to live long, healthy lives. And your son was involved in that.
That is a beautiful story. That's amazing that Eli is living on across the world. So thank you for sharing that. And we also know Walker recently for his birthday did something special for Eli.
So Eli and Walker's birthday, their 10th birthday, was in August. And, 10's kind of a tricky number for kids because they're kind of outgrowing birthday parties, but he wanted to do something. And he wanted to raise money for his birthday this year, his and his brother's birthday, in honor of Eli. And he asked, instead of presents this year, that his friends and family bring donations to Arkansas Children's Spina Bifida Clinic. And it was a really wonderful thing to see your child advocate for something that he's going to have ties with for the rest of his life. And he raised about $750, and we brought him up here to the Arkansas Children's campus, and he met with the leadership and the team for Spina Bifida and was able to meet some of the individuals that took care of his brother. And so it was a really wonderful way to kind of wrap up the last 10 years for Walker, but also, as his mother, to be able to see that for him and also for our family as well. I'm just really proud of him. Really proud of him.
That's so neat. And again, like you said, this is something that is going to affect not only your life, but Walker's life for the rest of his life. So that's an awesome story. Thank you again for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story and for what you do for the families and patients here at Arkansas Children's.
Absolutely. It's an honor.
What a beautiful story, and it's so neat to hear how Walker is following in his mother's footsteps and giving back. We really want to thank Jodie for sharing Walker and Eli's story, and we are so appreciative of Jodie being our parent partner at Arkansas Children's. Her and the family advisory boards at the hospital do such a good job in making kids better today and healthier tomorrow. Thanks again to Jodie for stopping by, and we will be back next month with a brand new episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and thank you for listening and for being a champion for children.